With the upcoming release of Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, the opening version of its main theme was released on streaming platforms, sparking quite a bit of debate. I don't think it's too surprising that opinions are heated within a franchise known for its extensive catalog of iconic music, regardless of the quality of the games they come from. I really like the opening animation. It's vibrant and full of action and movement. But I'll be upfront, I really don't care for the song. I figured it was just a song I didn't like and that I'd move on from it, but then the discourse started. And for the record, this is not an attack on anyone who likes this song, but I kept seeing this kind of puzzling rhetoric that all Sonic songs are cheesy, therefore this one isn't bad. And that piqued my interest. I'd like to preface my thesis by stating something I thought was kind of obvious, but it bears mentioning. I think all songs are inherently cheesy. To a certain degree, all art necessitates some degree of pretentiousness. It varies depending on the subject matter, naturally, but songs, much like poetry or a narrative, inevitably fall into some amount of cheese. Because pretty much nobody talks the way they sing, not following a rhythm, not trying to rhyme. The cadence of speech within a song is in itself a performance. So it seems kinda strange to me when people toss around the word cheese as either an inherent negative or some kind of shield. See, I don't think cheese is the problem with this song, at least not my problem with it, which got me thinking, what is it that I love about other Sonic songs that is not present in CrossWorlds' theme song, Cross the World? I think a recurring theme in my favorite Sonic songs tends to be the relatively abstract nature of them. How you can pluck them out of their established context and they'll still hold their meaning. They represent concepts and lessons without exclusively referencing concrete events. While they are directly applicable to the stories of the games they come from, they could also be applied to other contexts, scenes with similar lessons and themes outside of the Sonic franchise. I'm not a musician or a producer, but I can at least describe how the lyrics make me feel. Because there's a message within the words that transcends the immediate relation to the source material, through the use of metaphors or vaguely referencing character motivations and emotions to create a more relatable and expansive meaning. For example, Open Your Heart is not about a yellow anthropomorphic hedgehog fighting a giant water monster. It's about letting go of anger. It's about the struggle of conflicting ideologies, the humble origins of pain, and how each person tries to find themselves within the chaos. It depicts this horrible situation putting people in danger, born from the inability to open one's heart to the suffering of others, and the importance of standing up against that cycle, despite the sadness and the fear. Live and Learn is not about two hedgehogs in space fighting a big lizard. It's about finding the courage to rise up after every fall or loss. It's about the unfairness of life and the struggle of living with your own failures, but all the same, embracing tomorrow, learning from those mistakes, and finding your way forward, no longer shackled by the pains of the past. What I'm Made Of is about someone reaching their limit in the face of someone underestimating them. The built-up pressure finally releasing in an explosive confrontation, forcing them to show what they are truly capable of when push comes to shove. Undefeatable follows a very similar theme, with the added concepts of learning from the past and facing your fears head-on, and fervently latching on to one's ideals, to turn the tables, establishing themselves as a worthy opponent or a real threat. It's not about fighting some big robots, but I like how they subtly invite the question, if they are made of metal, what are you made of? With Me also depicts a confrontation from a more ideological standpoint, but all the same filled with a steady resolve. It's not literally about a witch casting spells, it's about imparting a lesson onto someone who's lost their way through their unwillingness to face reality. It's about demonstrating the value of the present, of every moment, of life itself, because it is finite. And despite knowing their opponent's point of view is misguided, the song's protagonist still plays the role of the bad guy and invites them to hold on to their ideals, to scream their dreams as they come forth and fight for their beliefs. testing the merits of their own ideals. Live Life as a companion piece reinforces the same Carpe Diem message. I Am All of Me isn't about Shadow shooting guns and going on the world's most boring choose-your-own adventure. It's about a deeply conflicted character feeling used by those around him as he tries to find the answers to who he truly is, asking it out loud, but also to himself, as his only means to pronounce his existence. It almost pessimistically depicts the many possibilities for this theoretical character, while still portraying them as determined to push through and find themselves. Never Turn Back, then, is about the hardships such a character endured to find themselves. It's about the ongoing, never-ending struggle that defining oneself implies. But now, with newfound resolve and purpose, they are willing to brave through hardship without ever falling down the same road of mistakes they once made. Some may see it as putting one's past behind them. I, for one, see it as acceptance. Despite how hard it might be, it's about choosing to go through the process of moving on, from loss, from regrets, and move forward. Night of the Wind is probably the most metaphor-heavy song in this whole list. It isn't about how cool it is to swing a sword around, it's about a hero rising up to inspire others, like a guiding star. It's not a literal knight, it's a metaphorical one, obviously, because his master is the wind, a knight of freedom, unshakable when faced with injustice. The song itself is filled with what appear to be contradictions. It speaks of ruling, and in the same breath, speaks of cutting through the power. But that's the whole point. It's about spinning knighthood on its head and boiling it down to the essence of heroism and selflessness. Endless Possibilities uses the literal idea of running as yet another metaphor for freedom, dashing through the never-ending ocean of opportunities. It's not about running, it's about optimism itself. Finding the inner strength to push onward no matter how many times you may fall, even with all the odds against you. It Doesn't Matter is Sonic's flagship theme song, but it doesn't describe his looks or his abilities, it's a thesis statement on his philosophy for life. It's written from the point of view of a character who isn't heroic in the most traditional sense of doing what's right, but who has a more complex way of thinking. Someone who lives by his own code, following his heart with full confidence, and with no need to justify himself. Someone who understands the complexities of the world, and fights for what he believes in until the very end, without calling it righteous. He's not concerned with debating morals, what matters is taking action. And similarly, his world isn't about a blue hedgehog who lives in Green Hill. It's like a fairy tale, describing this borderline mythological figure, the kind of lyrics you'd hear from a bard in a tavern singing about a legendary hero, someone fearless and so deeply inspiring, daring to take on life's challenges head-on. Someone who's unconcerned by excessive details because action is all he needs. Someone unwilling to compromise when fighting for his ideals, who will always get back up and fight through life his own way. Someone whose will is so impossibly strong and incorruptible, the very world itself bends to his optimism. It's his world, and we are just living in it. So, what is Cross the Worlds about? Grabbing rings? And, nothing. No matter how hard I tried, this song rings completely hollow. But Max, you may be saying, you're ignoring all the worst offenders of self-referential lyrics to make your argument. And you're right. I've left out crucially on the nose songs specifically because, well, I don't quite love them as much as the ones I mentioned before. And the real point of this video was to gush about how much I like those. But let's still examine some of them for the sake of the argument. Sonic Heroes is one of the first to come to mind. And I'll admit, the constant chanting of the game's title takes me out of the experience a little bit. However, to its credit, I don't think it's specifically shouting the title of the game, but rather referring to the conceptual idea of Sonic Heroes. This team of heroes within the Sonic universe. Though I don't think that's a particularly strong defense, as I think that name is also really dumb. But I will say that besides the chorus screaming Sonic Heroes over and over, the song does follow a lot of the metaphorical beats established before, particularly in terms of confrontations, pumping oneself up through unrivaled optimism and opposing injustice. It doesn't resort to explaining entire plot points or describing gameplay related actions. Although I think instrumentally and melodically it slaps, I still think it's one of the weaker Crush 40 songs in terms of lyrics. And if I wasn't so nostalgic for it, I might be a lot harsher on it. The other team-specific themes in Heroes are also very on the nose. But while that may not be my favorite thing ever, I don't think it's an inherent negative. These songs are about these characters. They are about the team dynamics. They tell their story more literally by name-dropping the team members and what they contribute to the cause, but they are still mostly about the teamwork itself rather than being about the game. I specifically really like the song for Team Chaotix, as it feels almost like an in-universe ad they push out to get customers. All Hail Shadow is pretty similar in that regard. It obviously name-drops Shadow. You can't really apply the song in a different context, but it holds a strong sense of metaphor. It never immediately references Maria or Black Doom or any specifics, but it assumes the audience will make the connection by themselves. In fact, I think it works rather well. Let's compare it to Sonic's more vague theme song, It Doesn't Matter. They both describe the character's way of life and ideologies to some extent, but since Shadow's main source of conflict has always been the struggle of finding and defining himself, his song, very literally celebrating his name, turns truly triumphant in a way that doesn't bug me at all. It's him finally finding himself and taking pride in his choices. But more specifically, people will point to racing game songs as the worst offenders, and they are probably the most fair comparisons. Supersonic Racing comes to mind immediately, but to me, that song has an added layer to it. A fairly thin one, let's not kid ourselves, but I think it works as it's more about the competition. It's not so much about racing as it is about the thrill, the feeling of the race. Sonic's name almost feels more like a pun than an actual name drop. The name of the game is Sonic R, not Supersonic Racing after all. I can't justify it that much, and I can't really say it's one of my favorite Sonic songs, but it tackles the sensation of competing in a way I think is interesting, with loads of energy and an extremely iconic melody. Meanwhile, the more recent Green Light Ride is also about competition, but leaning more on the teamwork aspect once again, while being less on the nose than Sonic Heroes as far as directly chanting the game's name. I'll fully admit it's one of my least favorite Crush 40 songs, so I'd write it off if I could, but I still appreciate some of what it's doing. I like how it uses concepts like igniting fuel as a metaphor for one's passion and drive to win, rather than the literal fuel burned by cars. It makes for a compelling and topical metaphor. I also like how it doesn't even use the word race at all. It just describes the competition as a green light ride, to the point where even when they use the phrase drive through forever, it ends up feeling like more of a metaphor about determination and living boldly, never letting anything slow you down, rather than talking about driving in a literal car race. But realistically, we can sit down and argue whether Toot Toot Sonic Warriors makes for compelling song lyrics till the cows come home, but just because things happened before doesn't mean they have to keep happening, nor does it mean I have to love them. All this long rant is basically just to say, I think Watch Me Grab All Those Rings Now and Gold Rings Hard Treasure aren't just really bad lyric choices, they are literal in a way that feels almost patronizing to me. Try as I might, I can't find a satisfying metaphor or overarching theme, and that's what ends up making the whole song feel so hollow. It's just describing gameplay elements in a way that makes it feel condescending. Yeah, kicking posterior fast isn't an eye-opening line either, but individual lines don't bother me so much when there's more substance present, conveying a strong theme built up through the whole song. Cross the Worlds is just a song about the video game Sonic Racing. That's it. And that's not inherently a bad thing. That's all it needs to be from a realistic standpoint. It's just such a shame that it doesn't strive for more given Sonic's musical pedigree. And I guess that brings me to my closing argument though. Does it even matter? I know, bold of me to say that after spending however many minutes overanalyzing Sonic songs, but really, you might think I absolutely hate this song, but I opened this video by saying I don't care about it. And that's the truth. Maybe it's because I'm not super interested in kart racers like CrossWorlds, and likely won't be buying it. But is it that important that the kart racing spin-off game has an underwhelming theme song? I understand the fear of that kind of writing bleeding into the main series, but among all those 2000s era Sonic songs, I also name-dropped Undefeatable, which has easily become one of my favorite Sonic songs out there. I think the vocal tracks in Frontiers fall in line with a lot of the elements I described about my favorite Sonic songs, in fact. Carrying over metaphorical meanings, relying on a strong message rather than anything concrete or describing gameplay. I feel like we can cut the sound team some slack and assume that they won't just throw all that away considering the overwhelmingly positive reception those songs have had. And not just the Titan Battle songs, One Way Dream and even I'm Here too. Despite very blatantly using the game's title in a sentence, it at least weaves it in with some elegance. Many people even interpreted these songs as describing Sonic Team's own ambitions and will to persevere despite budget cuts and general lack of faith in the brand from the higher-ups. And you wouldn't have seen that kind of passion for these songs if they were about grabbing rings. It's something worth criticizing. Constructive criticism is always valid, otherwise I wouldn't have made this video. But I also don't think it's worth going all red alert and starting fights all over socials. I wanted to dive deeper into what makes me really like a Sonic song, to concretely explain why this song feels uninspired to me. And I suspect it's the same for a lot of people, even if they haven't had the time or energy to articulate it properly. It's not an attack on anyone who likes it, nor is it just Sonic fans complaining about everything. I just think it's something worth discussing. Because it's about art people are genuinely passionate about. And brushing it off in a few insults isn't doing anyone any favors. So yeah, I think it matters. Hey, thanks for watching. I've been trying to get this video made for a couple months now, but college has been getting in the way and I got pretty sick right around the release date for Sonic CrossWorlds, which is a bit of a shame. But hey, it's done now. And while you're here, maybe leave a comment and tell me what you think about certain Sonic songs. Maybe you have a totally different read on some of them. Like, I know a lot of people like to see With Me as sung from the perspective of Merlina rather than Sonic, and I think that's totally valid. I want to hear what you think about the Sonic songs that you love. Anyways, if you had fun, maybe like and subscribe and all that fun YouTube stuff if you resonated with anything that I said. And I don't know how often I'll be posting videos because of college, but it's fun, so maybe I'll see you around. Bye!